Welcome to today's Times Higher Education webinar delivered in partnership with Covidence on building research culture and reputation through scalable systems. My name is Xiu Ting. I am the Senior Consultant with Times Higher Education Consultancy Division. So today we just wanted to talk about research culture. So across higher education, we see that institutions are under growing pressure to improve research quality, increase output, strengthen collaborations, and demonstrate impact, all while operating in increasingly complex and resource-constrained environments. For many of our university colleagues, the challenge is not simply about encouraging more research activity, but about how to build the systems to be more structured, how to encourage the culture that allow this research excellence to thrive consistently at that scale. Recently, in our Asia Summit in Hong Kong, which I believe many of you were in attendance, research also emerged as a major theme across many sessions and leadership conversations. We also heard a strong ambition from institutions across APAC to build deeper regional partnerships and strengthen their research standing throughout more connected and scalable systems. Before I continue, I would like to mention that this webinar is being recorded and we will share an on-demand video and article with all the participants afterwards. We'll also be taking questions from the audience, so please feel free to use the Q&A function to ask questions to our wonderful panelists. Speaking of our panelists, we're joined by a fantastic panel with expertise spanning institutional leadership, research development, sustainability, innovation, and systemic review workflows. Thank you all so much for being here. And I'd like to begin with a quick opening round. Michael, if we can start off with you. If you could introduce yourself quickly, briefly yourself and your role at the university. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, wherever you are in the world. This is Professor Dr. MJ Dino. I'm an associate professor at the University of Central Florida and concurrently the Director for Research Development and Innovation at the Our Lady of Fatima University from the Philippines.
Thank you, Professor MJ. If we can move to Daniel.
Hi, good morning from Malaysia. I'm the Director for Research and Sustainability at Sunway University, where I actually oversee the university research strategy and strategy initiative, as well as sustainability program, and also a flagship community development initiative from the university. Nice to meet all of you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. If we can move to Professor Fadzil.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. My name is Fazil Hassan. I'm currently the Dean for Postgraduate and Research. So I'm looking into the whole value chain from postgraduate study up to the lower tier of research work and project. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Fadzil. And we're joined by our Covidence colleagues as well. Julie, please.
Hi, thank you. Welcome. My name is Dr. Julie Brown. I'm a Principal Consultant Systematic Reviewer with Covidence, and I'm based in New Zealand. I've got over 21 years experience of writing and publishing systematic reviews and clinical practice guidelines. And my main role within the company is in supporting our users, providing high quality training. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. And going to Shah.
Thanks, Xiu Ting. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Shah Satini, and I lead APAC at Covidence. Great to be co-hosting this session together with THE. If I could take some time and say more, Xiu Ting, would that be all right?
Of course, we have plenty of time.
Awesome. I just wanted to recap a little bit. I attended the THE Asia University Summit in April this year. Great opportunity to meet many university leaders across APAC. So really nice to reconnect and continue the conversation around research. During my trip to the summit in April, one thing stood out very clearly was universities across APAC going through a major shift in research. There's increasing pressure to produce higher quality research, improve global reputation, strengthen collaboration, adopt AI meaningfully, and at the same time, create real impact to society. But research is becoming more complex. Research today no longer happens within one faculty or department. Universities bring together people across disciplines, industries, institutions, and countries. one speaker said something that really stayed with me. Interdisciplinary collaboration feels like learning a new language. And I thought that was very true. Even when people want to collaborate, differences in workflows, systems, expectations, and research practices often slow things down. Another message from the summit was technology matters, including AI. But technology alone is not enough. Research culture matters, governance matters, transparency matters, strong systems also matters. And that is exactly why today's conversation is important. How universities move forward from fragmented workflows to scalable systems that strengthen research quality, collaboration, publication outcomes, and ultimately reputation and impact. So I hope everyone will have a fruitful time today. And thank you again, everyone, for attending today's session. Back to you, Siu Ting.
Thank you, Shah. I think you've covered some of the things that I wanted to ask today. So maybe let's start with Dr. Michael. Something that was highlighted at the summit, like what Shah said, a lot of institutions do highlight ongoing challenges around research quality and output. In your institution, or what do you think, looking at the general sector, what are the most significant barriers universities face today in improving research quality? And which aspect of this research culture or this research ecosystem should they focus first to create meaningful progress?
Okay, so I think that's a very good question to start, of course, a discussion, of course, rolling. And I would agree with all the statements that were mentioned by Shah. And I would like to answer that question from the perspective of a manager or a leader as a director of Research Development Innovation Center at Our Lady of Fatima University. And I must admit that university systems coming from developing countries face a lot of extra challenges when it comes to investments and prioritization when it comes to research, innovation, and development. So to make my response very brief and concise, our strategy actually focuses on three important factors that for me are really important in driving success in research, development, innovation. And I call it the three Ps. So first is the people, second is the process, and third would be the product. So first is people, and that includes partnership, that includes interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary collaboration. So as a leader, I strongly believe that research center is built by amazing talents. And from our experience, based from the data that we had, success is 90% human resource and 10% physical resource. That means if you're going to provide the tools, techniques to the research center, so it's not actually enough, but 90% is the human resource. So we need to really embed culture into our human investments. We need to change the mindset of people. And of course, we need to change some of the factors that drives human resource to produce scholarly work. And that includes workload allocation, promotion criteria, and incentives within the university. So the second P is process. So we need to build engines that make it work. We need to provide direction to our human resource. So in the process perspective, research development and innovation agenda is very much important because it serves as a compass for everyone and unifying the goals and features. We need to analyze our internal and external data as well as the agenda and development plans of international, regional, and local partners. So in our perspective, we're actually updating our agenda every now and then, and that includes the agendas of the United Nations, just like the SDGs, our International Council of Nurses for our health programs, the WHO, and even in the local agendas for our Commission on Higher Education, and also our Department of Science and Technology. So we also look into our internal structures to make it easier for our researchers to produce scholarly work. So we need to provide that Bible for our researchers in terms of the process. And our manual in research in our university stand as compass. common manual for publication and scientific studies. And from the name itself, it actually provides the direction for everyone so that everyone would be at the same page. And finally, the third P refers to product. So one of our earliest investments is on our research management system because we need to track and quantify the outcomes of our work because we cannot improve something that we cannot measure. So also we are working, while working in this contemporary world, it requires conscientious effort to select the tools or softwares that make research tasks more bearable for our researchers. And I always telling, my researchers in the university that they are very lucky because nowadays we have lots of, softwares, databases, and tools that they can use to produce more quality research output. So again, we focus on the three P's, people, that includes partnership, process, and of course, product. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. MJ. That's so interesting. And I think that's something that I'll touch upon later as well with the people, because in my work, I see a lot of one of the key components of research is still people partnerships, like you said. But then how are we going to tackle this with the rise of AI? And I think that's something that we'll get to later. But thank you so much for that. I think let's go to Daniel. We're seeing a little bit of research become more interdisciplinary. Universities are becoming more interdisciplinary as a result as well, and tied to broader outcomes like sustainability and social impact. So my question to you is, how does this changing expectations reshape university challenges? And where are these current research systems kind of like falling short in a sense, and how can we solve them? Sorry, Daniel, I think you're muted.
Thanks, Shooting. Sorry. And as we talked about barriers earlier, I think one thing we all acknowledge in this Zoom meeting or in this Zoom room is that we can't shy away from those barriers. And at Sunway University, one of the key things that we really work on or promote a lot among the research fraternity or the ecosystem is really integration, and also the buzzword of multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary collaboration. So one of the things that we actually focus a lot more on is what we call impact. As my previous colleague unpacked the 3P, I would like to share the acronym impact with listeners or participants today. Is that we focus on driving impact from a very different perspective. The first I actually talks about integration. So we really ensures that systems that we actually procure could actually integrate all the different workflows that we have. And one of the key things that leads to fragmentation in universities is that what happens in the level above us may not something that I know that's happening in level that's below us. So there are a lot of good research that is happening. There's a lot of publications that is happening within the same fraternity or in the same ecosystem, but these are often not being shared. Therefore, as a university, we actually invest in various systems. We also develop our own frugal systems on our own to ensure that the data points or the outputs of our research are actually telling us something. So integration to us is very important as the first I. The second part of developing strategies to move away from fragmentation is actually mentorship. We focus on talent, as mentioned by the earlier speaker, in a very different mode. We actually ensure that our experienced researchers actually mentor the early career researchers. So that's M. Mentorship is very important for us to strategize and to work out proper workflows. The P that we focus on is to promote, and we promote quality and quantity by ensuring that we actually encourage more strategic alignments in the things that we do. And one of the things that we promote quality and quantity is also through our research visibility of our work. And C, which is collaboration. We focus a lot on collaboration because collaboration will be one of the strategies to overcome some of the challenges that we face at our university. And of course, the last one will be T, which is all our work has to be translational, whether to society or to the communities. Is important for the research work in the present era to be translational. I guess from a personal perspective, gone were the days that we often focus on fundamental research. You will have 50-60% of researchers or even PhD students that will just focus on dealing with fundamental research. But it is time now that we rise above fundamental research to look at translational research, which is that real where funding is, where impact can really be articulated, and where lives can really be transformed. And I guess that's where we have to break the barriers through what we call an impact framework. Yeah, so that's from my perspective. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Daniel. I think that's very interesting, and especially with the ethos of Sunway, right? Like the origins of Sunway being very much industry focused. The last T is actually super important for you guys, where it has to translate from the research from the university into the industry, and we see that a lot of universities are also moving in this direction. So that's definitely the way forward, I believe. If we can go to Julie. From kind of a workflow and research process perspective, what are the most common inefficiencies that you see in research workflows today, and how do they actually kind of affect the research quality and publication outcomes?
Great question. Thank you. I guess my perspective is coming from that of evidence synthesis as a research output, so slightly different perspective. But I'm really glad to see that the things that spring to my mind are also resonating with the other speakers as well, other contributors. So a really common objective, but also a significant barrier that I see is collaboration. So when teams lack the internal framework or the cultural support for collaboration, then research tends to occur in silos or isn't being conducted at all. So you potentially end up with duplication of efforts even within an organization. And many institutions have brilliant researchers who end up working in isolation because their internal systems don't speak to each other. So another barrier I frequently see is underdeveloped infrastructure and support and methodological expertise. It's really essential to develop and support an ecosystem for research. I think that's really quite fundamental. And without that infrastructure, there is no research. It's not going to go anywhere. So my area of expertise is evidence synthesis, and that can be technically quite demanding. When we get the recommendations wrong, the impact can affect clinical treatment, education policy, the environment, for example. So without investment in expertise, there are going to be consequent risks of inferior or inaccurate publications, publications that fail to reach reporting guideline requirements, and potential reputational damage. And just a few points I had around the workforce as well. I think it's really important for us to develop those new and emerging researchers and have everyone aligned. So for evidence synthesis, there's a critical need for access to a skilled workforce that includes librarians and information specialists and other research staff. And these individuals can really help save an awful lot of research hours for inexperienced researchers. And the research staff are potentially the staff to ensure a comprehensive and a really high quality methodology throughout the workflow steps in any kind of research, but particularly in evidence synthesis. And just the last point, really relating to those kind of services that are available, one thing that I've come across quite often is a lack of access to software and technology. So in terms of reference databases, reference management systems, and software that can support high quality workflow processes. And the access to suites of databases can really enhance quality research and evidence across all disciplines. And when it comes to software, I think what people learn along the way is that the manual labor cost of performing a lot of research tasks is often substantially higher than the investment in the software, especially when that software integrates workflow solutions, automation of tasks. A lot of things are using AI now, audit trails, and they support the publishing and reporting guidelines. So those are just a few of my points. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you for that. I think if we go to Dr. Fadzil, building upon what Julie mentioned about isolation, I guess my question to you from a leadership perspective, what does it take to move from an institution from this kind of isolated and very fragmented research practices to a more standardized and scalable systems? And on top of that, how do you bring the faculties along with you? Because we know that a lot of times, sometimes at a leadership perspective, there's a directive, but it's maybe sometimes not realistic or not like it's just not helpful for the faculties just due to some various ways of working that they already have.
Okay, thank you, Zhuting, for the very interesting question. I think I think everyone will agree with me. The easier way to impose something is through KPI. So you impose a KPI, everyone need to follow that. But is it the answer? I would say no. It's not going to sustain. So it's going to be a short term. If you have like a set of KPI for 2026, so all the academic need to produce this number of secured research grant, this number of publication, and then this number of supervision. I think these are all the key things that need to be done with regard to research. Well, people will do it, but the only important part is that how we're able to sustain, how we're able to create the culture. I think that's a very critical thing. It's very important early on to make everyone understand that it is a journey rather than a short-term kind of deliverable at the end of the year. That's why we need to ensure that the whole value chain is intact. Whenever people coming in join your institution, the support system should be there in terms of seed funding for them to really start their research work. In terms of the graduate assistantship that we're able to assign to them to really help them. My colleague, Prof. Dino, as well as Prof. Lee mentioned earlier about mentorship. I think that's also important. That's why in UTP, in University Technology Petronas, we align ourselves into only 3 important grand challenges. The first one is on energy security, the second one on sustainable living, and the third one on regenerative future. Because we want to ensure everyone is really concerted with the big agenda of the whole university. In fact, when we talk about recruitment of a new academic, we ensure that the people that we brought in into the system be able to align themselves. Otherwise, we are not do justice to them. When we recruit someone into the system, someone that more or less not aligned with whatever that you have, definitely I think it's going to be a tough time for that person to really assimilate into the research center, to be assimilate into the research institute. I think that's very critical to ensure that everything is intact and the support system is intact, and to let people know that it's a journey and it is more or less a win-win kind of arrangement, which means that, okay, it's why we do something, why they need to really develop something and focus on a certain aspect of a research work, because at the end of the day, they're able to contribute to the society, that they're able to really contribute to the bigger agenda. As long as people understand how they're able to contribute to the roadmap of the research center, of the institute, research institute, and so on, I think people be able to be aware and be able to see how they fit in. I think it's very important at a very early stage to ensure everyone well aware, rather than simply put a KPI, rather than simply put enforcement. People will do it, but it will not sustain. I hope my short answer be able to answer. To create a culture is very challenging, but it's worth it to ensure that the whole value chain of your research work be able to be intact for many years to come. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fadzil. I think the whole idea around KPI is starting to become a little bit of a naughty word in universities. A lot of people are like trying to move away from that idea of the word KPI. We've recently worked with other universities as well who told us that they don't use the word KPI anymore because once they use the word KPI, the working committees or the working groups below will start to push back. So I think just to add on to that one question, how do you balance that with academic freedom? So you want professors to do the work, you want them to, but you also want them to have the freedom to do their own research. How do you kind of balance that kind of like, it's a very fine line, I think. So how do you balance that?
Okay. In UTP, we have this arrangement, what we call 80-20. 80% alignment to the research agenda and grand challenges that the university would like our people to really work on. The three important grand challenges that I've mentioned earlier about energy security, sustainable living, as well as regional future. Another 20% is where we are able to let our people to explore. Because sometimes they may be able to bump into something that not align accordingly to all the three grand challenges I've mentioned, but it is their passion. So we support that, but at the same time, I think I agree with you, there's a fine line because at one end, we need to ensure that the university is moving unified in a very unified manner in one direction, but at the same time, we also give the freedom. So that's our practice, 80-20 kind of arrangement. So and another important thing is that when it comes to the resources that we put, a lot of the resources is on the 80 part. So if we're talking about internal funding, graduate assistantship, and so on, is where they're able to really build in their competency and capability in the research agenda of the university. But if, let's say, they're able to secure international grant that maybe not align accordingly with the university agenda, we're able to support that, but it's going to be parked under the 20%. I hope I answered your question, Siti. Yeah.
Yes. I think this 80-20 split works in many, many different industries, many, many different areas. So
Yeah.
I think that's definitely something that's really helpful to them as well. Julie, if I can come back to you. Earlier, Shah mentioned, and this was something that was widely discussed at the summit as well. Collaboration was described very much as learning a new language, learning how to work together. So my question to you will be, how can the tools, a structured workflow that you mentioned earlier, and shared methodologies help researchers collaborate more effectively across disciplines, especially like we spoke with Daniel earlier, universities have become more and more interdisciplinary. How can someone from the science area work together with someone from humanities, even though the way of their research methodology might be so different apart?
Great, thank you. So I've got some quite good, I guess, exemplars of those steps that I've come across in my own training. So again, this is based on evidence synthesis. But of course, evidence synthesis now covers so many different disciplines. It used to be in the domain of medical and health sciences, but now we're seeing research come through in law, business, environmental studies, engineering, for example. So these people are all trying to then kind of new and emerging in the area. They're trying to be able to develop those skills. So firstly, just goes back to a really strong infrastructure. Those institutions that I see as being most successful are ones that aren't just buying tools, but they're reimagining their research ecosystem. So they're treating the infrastructure almost like a social catalyst that sparks interaction and drives growth. And they do that by helping new members integrate, strengthening existing ties, sharing resources and learning. And I think that shared knowledge is really, really important. And so by integrating things like research information management systems or research insight dashboards like we have at Covidence, leadership gains a real visibility into what's going on in each department. And what that allows them to do is identify hidden strengths and create opportunities for cross-departmental collaboration that creates a bridge for, I guess, interdisciplinary discovery. And I think that's really important. I think as well, there's a kind of what I've seen is a emerging section on building partnerships between the triple helix that universities, government, and business. And I think that has a really big impact at an academic level. It allows for publications and reputation to be built. At a financial level, it promotes state-of-the-art technology development and production. And then at the societal level, which is really important, you've got that impact. It's a little bit like Daniel mentioned about translational research. That's where whatever discipline you're working in, you have your research actually has an impact somewhere in society. And one thing that I've found that works really well across all these disciplines and departments is using a model like train the trainer. What that does is it kind of decentralizes expertise. It fosters a culture of peer-to-peer mentorship. So we've already spoken about how important mentorship is. And I absolutely agree. I think that's really important when we're trying to share knowledge across different disciplines. And so what I see is that there's a lot of importance put on scaffolding. So things like technology should be the scaffolding and not the barrier to research. And lastly, I was thinking that I've actually seen a big shift from kind of publication pride to provable impact. And again, I'm really glad that resonates with what Daniel was saying about that kind of translational impact. So it's really important for us in whatever discipline we're working in to see that shift in the needle being some kind of demonstration of public benefit. What that needs is a workforce that's got some really advanced skills in methodological literacy and critical thinking. Again, it's independent of what discipline you're working in. And I think there's a lot of shared knowledge there that can support that. And so that's what's going to set people up for really good forward-thinking agenda and that cross-disciplinary collaboration. So that's just a few examples.
Thank you so much, Julie. I guess just a follow-up question to that. Earlier you mentioned the idea of infrastructure, universities or institutions not just buying tools, but also using these tools to reimagine the way that they do research and the research process. Do you think that's the key differentiator for that will be the key differentiator? Because kind of everyone has the same tools in a sense, but how they use it will be different in that sense.
A little bit. The tools are there, they're available. Some tools will be more effective than others. But I think it's how that tool is used, how the knowledge is shared. It's about making sure that we build the next level of researchers so that they have all those critical skills, that they can move forward, they can come up with new creative ideas and put those into practice.
Thank you for that. And now back to Daniel. Speaking of a tool, AI is becoming very central to research. So how should universities integrate AI into their research systems while still ensuring transparency, proper governance, and academic integrity? I know this is an area for that's quite close to a lot of people's hearts. So my
Okay.
other panelists, if you feel if you want to join in to this discussion, feel free to. But yeah, let's start with Daniel.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely the most interesting conversation around AI. And just going back to tools, and also going back to the whole notion of multidisciplinary, I think one of the things that university like us at Sunway, how do we actually decide? Because tools are actually very expensive, right? It's not as cheap as what we think, as you can just get it and everyone will be happy with it. Because again, if the university is growing, the faculty is growing, the areas of discipline is growing, the demands for tools is going to increase, and not every university is going to be able to afford that. So from the lens of a multidisciplinary and transdisciplinary, when we decide on particular tool or infrastructure or system, we always employ this decision making where it has to be usable by all parties. And when we talk about all parties, it has to be a tool that can be used by student. It could be a tool that can be used by researchers, academic staff, as well as the tool used by administrators or research professionals, and even the management. So at Sunway University, when we invest into tools or systems, that's how we deploy that decision making around that. And that's where it goes back to when I talk about impact. One of the alphabet that I did not focus on was A, which is alignment to the governance and accountability. And these tools and system and infrastructure is very important to address those concerns. Back to AI, I think in this present time, we cannot shy away anymore from the use of AI in all our research endeavors, including our impact endeavors. We have to use AI responsibly, but there has to be ethics around it and how we used it. So as a university, we indeed has actually focused on first when the wave of AI came about, we actually scrambled a team to work on the ethics behind it. We scrambled a team of different multidisciplinary team coming together to discuss, okay, how should we use AI in different faculties, in different research. So that's one thing that we do because that's the basic. The second thing, now as we progress along as a university, is to really utilize the tools that is made available to us to reach greater impact in the things that we do. Apart from that, as a university, we also then start to develop more talents. So we are bringing about new programs on how do we use AI in classrooms, in research, and in many things that we do. So that's one thing that we actually emphasize on. We have to adopt, we have to adapt, and we have to move with it. Otherwise, we will be left behind. Yeah. And I pass the time to other colleagues who will be also interested on this topic.
Yes, thank you, Daniel. I think Professor MJ has something to say about this as well.
That's true. That's really an interesting and controversial question, especially nowadays that, there are differing, of course, perspectives when it comes to the use of artificial intelligence when it comes to scholarly and research production. So, in our university, we actually are adopting what we call the hybrid artificial intelligence. So, when you say hybrid artificial intelligence, so that's actually maximizing the positive benefits of artificial intelligence and minimizing its, of course, impact. So we conducted a lot of literature reviews before, okay, and surveys among our stakeholders. And, we developed our AI policy within the university for academic purposes based on those particular data. That's how we convert some of the results of our research into what we call policy. And we end up coming with, of course, this particular framework we called hybrid artificial intelligence. So again, it's maximizing the positive impact of AI and minimizing its negative impact. Because in some instances, if we're going to take a look at what literatures are saying, so there is actually a decrease when it comes to critical thinking, when it comes to the use of AI non-constructively. So, in hybrid artificial intelligence, so we actually humanize, okay, AI, and we humanize the products that utilizes AI. So we only select those areas that we can use AI when it comes to scholarly work. So we avoid using AI for tasks that are critical, risky, unethical, sensitive, and those that are typically done by humans. So we call it the crush factors: critical, risky, unethical, sensitive, and of course, humans. And of course, as we all know, AI is actually dynamic and fast developing. So in the future, there's a need for us to take a look at our agenda, or maybe we can tailor fit or do some sort of recalibration depending on the needs of our stakeholders. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor MJ. I love your acronyms: crash, compass. And before we move to the last question, I think I'll pop it over to Julie, who has a mic off now.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of go back to the AI question comment. So with regard to my research discipline and evidence synthesis, I think AI is really important here. We have, I guess, a research method that is becoming more and more integrated with AI. But going back to the comments that have already been made, even within that single research methodology, it's critical that we maintain high levels of accuracy and trust and transparency. Within our research methodology, we actually have some really excellent guidelines called the RAISE guidelines that are promoted by the Cochrane collaboration. Those guidelines are about responsible AI use in evidence synthesis, and they're really important for us to follow because fast doesn't always equate to quality, and people need to be sure that the suggestions they're being given are highly accurate, especially when we're looking at the health system, for example. So for my research discipline, keeping the human in the loop is really important. And again, just emphasizing over and over again, accuracy and those kind of research disciplines requires a little bit of change in practice, I guess, for some people who just want to move forward really fast with research projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. I think that whole idea about like trust is really important as well, especially now, with the whole like rise of AI, we don't know what's real, and I think there's even now more than ever there is that responsibility on to like researchers to kind of ensure that level of transparency so that the trust comes along after that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've just seen a whole flurry of publications around hallucinated references in publications. So yeah, we need to be very, very cognizant of work that's being produced and that we're reading and integrating into our practice and research.
Yeah, exactly. The hallucination, all like even in our own work as well, we see all of these hallucinated ideas. So it's a bit like, oh yeah, even though there are like sources that's being cited through the AI, but are they real or are they relevant? I think that's something that's so important to fact check more than ever. And it brings back to something that you mentioned earlier about like using critical thinking. Even though everyone has the same tools, but you have to use critical thinking to ensure that of the accuracy. We're just running a bit out of time, so I have this last question to Dr. Fadzil, which is that how can these stronger research systems actually help to translate your institutional research excellence into the real tangible impact, something like what Daniel mentioned earlier, whether it be in industry, in society, or in your institutional reputation?
Okay, I think I echo back whatever that have been highlighted by all my other colleagues. At the end of the day, we need to have a system, reliable, dependable, that able to monitor the progress of each and every individual. Because at the end of the day, we need to ensure that with the system, we're able to allocate resources where it is really matter. I'll give an example. In our case, we have a U research system that really monitor in terms of the secured research grant, the publication, the supervision of academic as well as many other things as well. So on one part, we are talking about transparency, but on the other part, because when we look into the whole value chain of research journey, it's not about the research excellence where we are talking about publication, Q1, Q2 publication, impact factor, and so on. But what is truly important, how we're able to bridge whatever deliverable at the lower TRL to the high TRL level and be able to ensure it reach out to the community, it reach out to the people. I still remember many years back when I returned back to Malaysia and I pitched to a government agency for a research grant. I think one of the important questions that being asked by the panel is that they don't ask how many publications that you are able to produce from the secured research grant, but they are asking what will be the benefit of this particular research work to the makcik and pakcik. Makcik and pakcik in the Malay language is the old folks at the villages. How they are going to benefit. I think it's very important. In fact, in UTP, whenever we are talking about seed funding and so on, early on, we already lay out the plan where the research work will end up, which particular community is going to get the benefit, which particular society, which particular industry, and how we're able to scale up the work after the PhD work has been completed and so on. I think it needs to be planned at early on, and we need to have a really proper system to really monitor that. At the end of the day, if we don't have that kind of system, this is what we call a shock sendiri. Shock sendiri means we thought that we are great in producing all the high impact publication, but at the end of the day, what is the contribution to the community at large, contribution to the society, to the industry, and so on. I think it's very critical to ensure we have an intact system that able to monitor the whole thing. At the end of the day, we know how we have invest accordingly and how it's be able to be translated to the community at large. I hope I answered the question. Yeah.
Thank you. I think it's all the makcik and pakcik is very real. It's how our research can translate all the way down even into the villages, and I think at the end of the day that's what the most impactful research will be. At the end, what we want to do in higher education is always to help our society. I think let's just move into the Q&A. We have one question from the audience. I think this will be something that Julie, you might be able to answer. Because this is something that you touched upon earlier about how expensive tools are as well. So the question from the floor is that advanced research data analysis software often requires expensive licenses that may be unaffordable for many researchers and institutions in developing countries. So to what extent this high cost of research software create inequality in research opportunities and academic competitiveness between those who can and those who cannot afford it? And what responsibility should software developers assume to make these research tools more accessible and inclusive while maintaining that high level of innovation and sustainability in software development?
Wow, that's a long question. Yeah, I think there are a lot of inequalities. A lot of these software companies are driven by profit, and so they don't have necessarily have an ethical perspective for their purchaser, which I think is really difficult when you're working in an LMIC and you don't have access to financial funds, for example. I think there is some kind of responsibility that a lot of these organizations should have, depending on the tool that's there. If we just go back to our organization, as Covidence, we're a not-for-profit organization. We do support LMIC countries with their research. So I think that there is a need for that, but I'm not sure that it's a priority for these companies. Maybe we need to find alternatives when we don't purchase their products. They might find an alternative for us as users. Not sure what anyone else on the panel feels about that.
Thank you for this, Julie. If there are any questions, please feel free to pop them into the Q&A box so that we can have the panelists answer them. While we're waiting for questions, maybe one question from me to you, onto the panelists. where, I mean, I've been asking quite a number of questions already, but one question from me. In one sentence, what is the most important action that universities or institutions should take in the next 1 to 2 years to strengthen their research culture and reputation? This can be something that you've already mentioned, or something that you feel that you haven't mentioned but you want to. I think that would be great. Sorry, before we go into that, we have one question. One theme raised by leaders at the THG Asia University Summit was the importance of exposing to students to research earlier. How important do you think it is for universities to start teaching research skills early, and what impact does this have on the overall research culture? Daniel, I see you have your mic off. Do you want to answer this
Sure.
question? I think you mentioned something a little bit about this earlier as well. So
Yeah. So I think at our university, we try to teach research from at least year 1 or year 2. Again, depends on the faculty that they come from. And to me personally, I think that is so important for undergraduate students, especially in year 1, to already have a taste of what research is all about. And I'm speaking from my own personal experience and my own personal alma mater, where actually I was exposed to research at year 1. I was already doing lab reports, filling in ethics consent and ethics submission. So I think that actually helps me to have a full cycle and view of what research is all about. And that actually leads me into policy development work, into research work, and also then publishing not only academic journals, but other publication as well. So I think it's important to have research being embedded in undergraduate studies as early as possible. Well, that's at least my personal view, so that we can really drive innovation and impact into the society.
thank you, Daniel. I think that's it's the same for me. I think when I was in university myself, we were already taught these research tools from year 1. I think from a different perspective of innovation, I think it's also realistic. It's telling students, if this is the pathway you want to go down, it's not about the sunshine and rainbows. Like you get to do your what you're passionate about, but there's also that back all that paperwork at the back that's required to work on this. I think Dr. MJ, you had something to mention.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So I would agree 100% with what Dr. Lee have mentioned. And also in addition to that, I would like to share my personal experience when it comes to research. So I came from a family of researchers, and I know how important developing research skills at a very young age. Okay, universities are actually our critical partners when it comes to developing research skills to our students. And I do believe that human beings are naturally inquisitive and naturally, of course, curious. So our educational system should shape students to make them, of course, researchers and natural scientists. So for me, introducing courses, maybe the research process or the scientific process at a very young age is, of course, very much important. And just like what the saying is always, of course, informing us that it takes a village to raise a child. We should be responsible not only as academics, but of course, there are different factors that might also affect the development of research skills, knowledge, and attitudes among our young population. So for me, as a researcher and academic, my principle is focused on 3 important Latin words. So these are what we call the core, caput, and manus. So when you say core, it means the heart. Caput, it means the mind. And manus, it means the hands. So for me, to develop the future-ready researchers, we need to stimulate their minds, of course, through academic interventions, may it be unstructured, structured, informal, or informal. You also need to let them practice what they are doing, right? And convert it into what we call skills, just like what our Chinese adage would always say, tell me I might forget, show me I might remember, involve me and I understand. Everything that's experience cannot be easily removed from from the system of our students. And I think the most important would be the heart, because this is where the impact of a researcher would come in. We always say to our young researchers to find your life purpose as a researcher. And just like, of course, our Japanese colleagues would always tell us, find your ikigai. Ikigai is your life purpose. And in the context of a researcher, you should also discover your life purpose as a researcher. You need to ask yourself, what are the topics where you're good at? What are the things that you need, that the world needs right now? And it's not only, being quantified nowadays, just like what Dr. Hassan have mentioned. So some of us are really bothered about numbers, KPIs, key performance indicators, and metrics. But at the end of the day, qualitative valuation is equally important. Even if the research, for example, doesn't receive a lot of metrics, but if it benefits the community, I think that's a good metric for us to identify if your initiatives in research would really work for your community. So again, caput, core, manus, mind, of course, the hands, and of course, the most important is the heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. MJ. I think that we've come to time. So thank you all for your questions and for joining us this morning. But before I end the session, I would like to invite Shah back for some closing remarks.
Thank you, Siu Ting. Thank you, big thank for the panelists for sharing such thoughtful perspective. Very good discussion. I think from me, just a few reflection from today's conversation. Really interesting to hear how Dr. Dino approaches research strategy with the 3 Ps in mind, a clear and structured way to think about how you strengthen culture and outcomes in campus. Also, Dr. Lee's focus on the impact framework, strong emphasis on translating research into meaningful outcomes and the real world impact, of course. And Dr. Fazil's perspective on building strong, sustainable research ecosystem, not only research output, but systems, partnership, capability, to the objective to sustain progress over time, and also how research impact community at large, the makcik and pakciks. So different approaches, common theme, stronger research system, better outcomes, long-term sustainability. I think one message that came through clearly today would be strong research culture does not just happen by chance. It takes leadership, governance, collaboration, and systems that support quality and consistency at scale. If I could share my screen, would that be okay? I would just do this quickly. And I can also see we have a question, but I'll just go through my 2 slides and then Siu Ting, you can take over. So going back to the objective of building research ecosystem infrastructure, this is where Covidence supports institution not only as a platform or a system, but through broader approach to strengthen research capability and research system. 4 key areas. We start with the fundamental capability building, support researchers, faculty, students through training, research development, onboarding, building local experts in campus. Next would be the research infrastructure that supports structured, transparent, and scalable workflow, all on a platform. And then we support collaboration. We help teams work more effectively across faculties, disciplines, and institutions. And also the research insights, better visibility into activities, able to track return on investment, progress, opportunities to strengthen research outcome. Ultimately, helping universities scale research more effectively while maintaining quality, consistency, and governance. And briefly about Covidence, Julie mentioned a little bit, we are a not-for-profit. We recognize we are the primary tool for Cochrane authors. Today, more than 480 universities, medical institutions, research organizations globally across health, education, engineering, policy, and many other disciplines trust us. We support institutions through research capability building. So if today's discussion resonates with your institution's priority, my contact numbers is on the screen. Feel free to connect with me afterwards. Back to you, Suting.
Thank you, Shah. And the question was just thanking us about the insights on building our research culture. So we're actually done with no more questions. So a huge thank you to all our panelists today, and just wanted to very quickly close off the session. I would like to again echo Shah's remarks that what we've heard from all our panelists today, the research outcomes are not just accidental. It is a result of very deliberate actions from enabling collaborations and embedding transparency through using AI, building partnerships. We do see that institutions that invest in scalable research infrastructure will be the best position to drive both societal impact, industry impact, and as well as institutional reputation. A huge thanks to our partner, Covidence, for today. And thank you to you all for joining us this morning as well. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.